Was Adolf Hitler a Christian? It sounds like a question that should have a simple answer, yes or no. But history is rarely that convenient because Hitler was baptized Catholic, he grew up in a Christian society, and sometimes he publicly talked about God and Christianity. And the Nazi Party even claimed to support something it called positive Christianity. So, was Hitler actually a Christian, or was Christianity just something he used when it was politically useful? Let's get into it. First, we need to go back to the beginning. Hitler was born in Austria in 1889 and was baptized into the Roman Catholic Church. He grew up in a Catholic environment, although historians debate how his personal religious beliefs developed as he got older. So technically, yes, Hitler was baptized Christian. But being baptized Christian and actually practicing Christianity are two very different things. And that's where the story gets complicated. As Hitler became politically powerful, he sometimes spoke positively about Christianity. In 1933, for example, he described Christianity as an important foundation of German values. The Nazi Party itself claimed to support positive Christianity. And that sounds pretty Christian, right? Well, not exactly. Positive Christianity was a deliberately vague Nazi political slogan. The party claimed it supported Christianity while simultaneously promoting a racial ideology, extreme anti-Semitism, nationalism, and loyalty to Hitler. The Nazis weren't simply saying, let's follow the teachings of Jesus. They were trying to reshape religion around Nazi ideology, and that's a massive difference. The United States Holocaust Memorial Museum notes that many German Christians initially interpreted the Nazi language about positive Christianity as support for Christian values. But the Nazi movement's actual ideology was built around race, nationalism, and anti-Semitism, and that's where the problem becomes impossible to ignore. The Jesus of Christianity was Jewish, so that's not really a controversial historical fact. Jesus was born into a Jewish family. He lived as a Jew. His disciples were Jewish. The earliest Christian movement emerged from Judaism. But some Nazis couldn't accept that. A faction inside German Protestantism called the German Christians attempted to reshape Christianity according to the Nazi racial ideology. They portrayed Jesus as Aryan, rejected the Jewish roots in Christianity, and even wanted to remove what they considered Jewish elements from Christian theology. So, in other words, they were trying to rewrite Christianity to fit the Nazis. Think about how extreme that is. Instead of changing their ideology to fit their religion, they try to change the religion to fit their ideology. And that tells us something important. The Nazis didn't simply disagree with Christianity, they wanted control over it. This is where historians have to be careful because there are plenty of quotes attributed to Hitler claiming he believed in God or Christianity, but Hitler was also a politician and propagandist, so public statements don't automatically tell us what he privately believed. His personal religious views appear to have been complicated and changed over time. He was not a conventional practicing Christian, and his worldview increasingly centered on race, nationalism, power, and his vision for Germany rather than the teachings of Christianity. His book Mein Kampf makes his ideological priorities very clear. It promoted extreme anti-Semitism and a racist worldview and aggressive expansion for German living space. Those ideas became central to the Nazi regime, and eventually they helped lead Europe into a war and genocide. It would be easy to tell this story as Hitler wasn't Christian, therefore Christians had nothing to do with Nazism. But history is more complicated than that. Millions of Germans were Christian. Around 1933, Germany had roughly 20 million Catholics and 40 million Protestants. And many Christians supported Hitler when the Nazis came to power. Why? Several reasons. Nationalism, fear of communism, political frustration, economic instability, and tragically, anti-Semitism that already existed within European societies, including elements within Christian history. Some Christians supported the Nazis because they believed Hitler could restore Germany. Some believed he would protect Christian society. Some supported his anti-Semitism, and others simply stayed silent. And that silence matters because Christianity wasn't responsible for Hitler's ideology, but Christians were not magically immune to the same hatred, fear, nationalism, and prejudice that affected everyone else. So here's another part of the story. Not every Christian supported Hitler, far from it. There were Christians who resisted the Nazi regime. One of the most famous was Dietrich Bonhoeffer. And Bonhoeffer was Protestant theologian who opposed the Nazi attempt to control the church. He eventually became involved in resistance against Hitler, and in 1945 he was executed at Flossenburg concentration camp. And there were others too. Some Christians helped Jews, some clergy spoke against Nazi policies, and some resisted in ways that ultimately cost them their freedom or their lives. So the historical picture isn't Christians supported Hitler and it isn't Christian opposed Hitler, it's both. Some supported him, some resisted him, some compromised, some stayed silent, and some paid an enormous price for standing against him. Here's the best answer. Hitler was baptized Catholic and came from a Christian background, but calling him a Christian in the ordinary sense of someone who sincerely followed Christian teachings is highly misleading. His political ideology was fundamentally built around racial nationalism, anti-Semitism, and dictatorship, and expansionism, and those beliefs cannot simply be equated with the teachings of Jesus. At the same time, we shouldn't pretend that Christianity had no relationship with Nazi Germany. The Nazi regime deliberately appealed to Christianity, and many Christians supported the Nazis. Christian anti-Semitism had a long and complicated history in Europe, and some Christian institutions failed terribly in the face of persecution, and others resisted. History doesn't give us a clean answer, it gives us a warning. Maybe the most important lesson isn't whether we can put Hitler into a box labeled Christian or not Christian. The more important question is, what happens when people put their ideology above their moral principles? Because Hitler didn't just ask Germans to believe in certain political ideas, he demanded loyalty, he demanded obedience, he demanded that the individual became part of something larger, the nation, the race, the state, the Führer. And that's dangerous because once people decide their group is more important than human beings, almost anything can be justified, and that's where the story becomes relevant far beyond Nazi Germany. Religion can be used for good, religion can be manipulated, nationalism can inspire people to serve their country, nationalism can also become an excuse for hatred. Technology can help humanity, and technology can also destroy. The question isn't simply what do we believe, it's what happens when our beliefs stop allowing us to see humanity over other people. Hitler's Germany shows us what that can become, and millions of people were murdered. Europe was devastated, and the Holocaust remains one of the clearest warnings in human history about what happens when hatred, dehumanization, and absolute political power collide. So, was Hitler Christian? The answer is complicated, but one thing is not. Hitler's actions cannot be used as a simple definition of Christianity, and Christianity's existence cannot be used as an excuse to ignore the failures of Christians who supported, tolerated, or even remained silent under Nazism. History is messier than that, and maybe that's exactly why we need to remember it, because the most dangerous question isn't always, are we on the right side? Sometimes it's, what are we becoming while we're convinced that we are? So thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on the notifications for more videos exploring Christianity, history, and some of the biggest questions behind the stories that we already think we understand. Peace out.